I don't know everything that Sergeant Gerry Hill did in Oak Cliff, but I do know of some things that I think are worthy of mention. One of the things he did is that he came out the front of the Texas Theater and he was photographed there, and the Warren Commission has this exhibit of that photograph. The two photos on top are from the Warren Commission exhibit, some scan of the Warren Commission exhibit, and you can't see Gerry Hill in that. And in fact, it looks as though he was intentionally blacked out of that photo so that you wouldn't be able to see Gerry Hill in that. On the top on the left is the original scan, and on the right I adjusted contrast and brightness to the whole image, and it revealed a spot that's darker than the rest, and that spot just happens to be over Gerry's head. So I think that means that he was purposefully obscured in this picture so that we couldn't see him. Now, he talked to the Warren Commission about this photo, and he said this: "There are three people in this picture that I recognize. The officer with the white uniform hat on, that is in the foreground looking at the picture, would be to the left side, is C.T. Walker. The suspect, in what is an open collar and what appears to be a t-shirt from here, looking almost directly at the camera with his face practically covered by the officer's cap, is a man later identified to us as Lee Harvey Oswald. And the man in the suit looking at the camera with a cigar in his mouth is Detective Paul Bentley. There is to Mr. Bentley's left part of another officer that is apparently wearing a suit with only part of his suit and his shirt and his left hand showing. That cannot be recognized, but I will have to admit I think it is me. And there is a faint image there, if you get the light. That is what I am trying to see very faintly. If we had yes, that is going to be me. What we need is to get the light in at an angle. If you hold it a little bit to your right, yes, that is going to be me." So the copy that the Warren Commission was working with, apparently it was difficult to see Gerald Hill in that either. I'm not sure they ever see him. He says, "That is going to be me." It's as if he doesn't recognize the image. But anyway, on the bottom is a different version. It does not come from the Warren Commission volumes. And quite clearly, I think you can see the face there, and it's Gerry Hill. So you could argue that this is a matter of photo finishing issue where the picture just wasn't made so well. But I think, because of what you can see in the upper right-hand corner there, that Gerry Hill's face was intentionally obscured in the photo to hide his appearance. And Gerry didn't name everybody in the photo. Mr. Bellin noticed, "Do you know who this person is with the helmet at the extreme left, the person with the helmet? I do not recognize him specifically, but just trying to identify that much of him, I would say it could be an officer named L.E. Gray, but I can't make positive identification." "Okay, Sergeant." And I think Mr. Bellin was careful not to call this guy a motorcycle officer, because even though he's wearing a motorcycle helmet and a jacket consistent with a motorcycle officer, the helmet does not have the Dallas Police insignia on it. So Mr. Bellin could see that this isn't a police officer, and that's why he didn't call him one, I think. But Gerald Hill names Leon Gray, and these are all photographs of Leon Gray, except number 4. Leon Gray, as you can see in the top center, he was out in front of the motorcade during the motorcade, and there in the left there, he's photographed at Parkland Hospital. The one on the top on the right shows his motorcycle parked at Parkland Hospital, and in the lower right-hand corner, you see Leon standing there at Parkland Hospital. And in picture number 5, you can see that Leon Gray has a cleft chin. And maybe that's a good excuse for Sergeant Hill to identify him as this officer, but it's not the same cleft chin, as you can see if you care to compare with number 4. So I think Gerry knows damn well who this guy is, and is just not saying so. And this is Gerry on the radio in Oak Cliff. He says, "The officer was already gone when I got there. He was driving car number 10. Do you know what ambulance took him? We had 3 going. No, Dudley Hughes passed in front of me going to Beckley. He looked like he might have had him. Where did the officer go? I saw some squads going towards Methodist real fast. Imagine that's where he is. But if Gerry had really been at the Texas School Book Depository as he claimed when the Tippett call came over the radio, then he could not possibly have seen the Tippett ambulance on the way to 10th Street, because the call was on the radio at about 1:18, and the ambulance had picked up Tippett at 1:19, and Gerry Hill would have been still at the Texas School Book Depository getting into his car to leave by the time the ambulance was already on the way to Methodist. So there's no way Gerry would have seen that ambulance if his story about how he got to Oak Cliff was true. So I think Gerry is just making up this story. Well, he probably knows it's true. He's got the ambulance service right, Dudley Hughes. He's got the hospital right, Methodist. So he either saw that for real, or he knows that's what is supposed to have happened, so he's saying that. But if his story was true about how he got to Oak Cliff, then he could not possibly have seen that ambulance on the way to Methodist. So he's lying here in one way or another. And this is photography of Gerry Hill just after he got into the car outside of the Texas Theater, just after the arrest of Oswald. And notice that he's on the car phone. He doesn't have a radio microphone to his mouth. He's got a telephone to his mouth. And I think this is important because I think the time of the Oswald arrest was earlier. We have a police report that says he was arrested at 1:40, and I think that's probably about right. But on the radio, the indication is that Oswald was arrested at 1:52. So I think in the photography we see Gerald Hill on the phone earlier than that, and I think that was planned in advance to fake this time of arrest in real time. That is, to arrest Oswald around 1:40 and then make it seem as though he had been arrested later than that. And I think the purpose of this was to create alibis, especially for Officer James Taylor, who's that motorcycle officer coming out of the Texas Theater that Gerry Hill couldn't identify correctly. I think the idea is to make it seem as though Oswald was arrested later, so that when Taylor gets back to the hospital, he'll be there at a time that makes it impossible for him to have been at the Texas Theater for Oswald's arrest. So, that's that. And then we have Gerry Hill here transmitting on Channel 2. First, I think it's interesting that he's going back and forth between Channels 1 and 2. I think it displays an attitude where he's got this supervisory role over what's going on. If he was really just involved in what was going on Oak Cliff, I don't think he'd even think of going to Channel 2. I think he'd just stay on Channel 1. But in particular what he says here, he says, a witness reports that he was last seen, the suspect, in the Abundant Life Temple about 400 block. We are fixing to go in and shake it down. Is that the one that was involved in the shooting of the officer? Yes. The dispatcher says, they already have him. No, that wasn't the right one, he says. Now, this is 1:44. So this is after the arrest of Oswald, when I think Oswald is probably in the car with Gerry Hill here. Either that or they put him in some other car. But I think Gerry is perpetuating this idea that Oswald has not yet been arrested. And he gets on Channel 2 here to correct this report of Oswald having been arrested at the library. So I think this displays that Gerry Hill is a manager of what's going on. The fact that he's on Channel 2 and making corrections for the dispatcher. And here we have some film of Gerry at the furniture warehouse they were searching for Oswald. Gerry is the one in the white shirt there with not wearing a hat and not wearing a whole lot of hair either. And I think it's interesting that Gerry has abandoned his hat and coat. You can't see whether he's wearing his necktie or not. Now you might just theorize that he took that off because he was getting warm and he didn't want to be sweating like a pig. But I think it's interesting that he is out of uniform, so to speak. When he's at the Texas School Book Depository, he's wearing his hat and jacket and tie. Then when he's in Oak Cliff after Tippett has been shot, he's not wearing his jacket or hat, and you can't see whether or not he's wearing his tie. And then, coming out of the Texas Theater, he's back in uniform, wearing his jacket, hat, and tie. So we don't know when Gerry took off his hat. All we know is that short and chunky Gerry is there on Patton Street at this time.
Now, when you heard the shots and you went out of the house, did you see a man with a gun?
Yes, I did.
What was he doing?
Oh, he was reloading it. When I said he was reloading his gun.
And how would you describe that man?
Well, he's kind of chunky. He's kind of heavy. He wasn't a very big man.
Was he tall or short?
Yeah, he's kind of short guy.
Short and heavy.
Yes.
And maybe that explains why Gerry's face is covered up in the photograph of him coming out of the Texas School Book Depository that the Warren Commission was using. Maybe they didn't want Gerry's face publicized a whole lot back then because maybe he was Mr. Short and Chunky. And the last thing I'll cover here is a very well-known incident on the radio, as you can see in the lower left here. Gerry says the shells at the scene indicate that the suspect is armed with an automatic .38 rather than a pistol. And people have discussed this quite a lot about the difference in the shells. If you look at the shells, you can see they come from an automatic or whether they're from a revolver. And Gerry should have known better. Well, I think Gerry probably did know that Tippett had actually been shot with an automatic. If you look at the autopsy diagram, you can see there were 3 shots to the chest, fairly close together. That's probably 3 quick shots to the chest, and 1 shot to the head. And so probably whoever shot him gave him 3 quick shots, and then he went down, and then he shot him in the head to finish him off. Just as Dale Myers says happened on 10th Street, but which did not happen on 10th Street. And in fact, I think Tippett was shot in Dealey Plaza. I think he was shot about in the area of Black Dog Man's wall, where the red oval is. In yellow is circled Black Dog Man. And I think Black Dog Man is probably also Shadow Man, the guy we see walking away in the Botham photo, also circled in yellow. And I think Tippett was shot there, probably with an automatic pistol, and that maybe Gerry Hill is actually Black Dog Man and Shadow Man. Maybe Gerry Hill shot Tippett in Dealey Plaza. And that might tie a lot of things together. I don't think I could ever prove that, but that occurs to me, so I might as well say so. That might explain why Gerry thinks the shells are automatics, because he himself shot Tippett with an automatic, and he just assumes that the shells that are going to be planted on 10th Street are shells from an automatic. But apparently somebody didn't get the memo. So I think Gerry might have shot Tippett in Dealey Plaza, and then might have pretended to shoot Tippett on 10th Street. Alright, well, that's all I've got for Gerry and Oak Cliff. Maybe someday I'll be able to tell a more coherent? Maybe cogent. No, it's probably coherent story. I don't know, though. I think my cogency and my coherency is going in the other direction. But that'll do it for this video, whatever I just said.